usually in English translated as patience or tolerance, forbearance. It's often regarded as the antidote to our anger and irritation. If people make us upset, then rather than retaliating by becoming angry, we appreciate that one of the important qualities for really attaining to full awakening is to cultivate this quality of forbearance, and we cannot do that if nothing ever irritates us. For example, if we are living in a beautiful, harmonious community like this, then we can think that we're ever such lovely people. When people are being nice and friendly and kind, doing and saying what we would like them to do and say, it's very easy to fool ourselves into thinking that we ourselves are also such lovely, nice, kind, sweet people. It's very easy to be, loving to people who are lovable, right? So this is wonderful. And I mean, it's not that we have to be mean to others in order to have them practice. But nonetheless, although it is very nice to be in a harmonious community, in a harmonious sangha like this, and the Buddha himself put a lot of emphasis on the importance of harmony within the community, within the sangha. Nonetheless, it is not an opportunity for us to learn this important quality of patience and forbearance. Therefore, when people are difficult, are very irritating and annoying or rude, or do things which we wish they hadn't done, then rather than getting all upset and irritated and feeling anger inside, we can think, oh, thank you, you're so obnoxious, you're so horrible, you're really my teacher of patience. So in the text, in later texts, after Atisha, his followers, they said, you put this difficult person on your head like a guru, and think, oh, I'm so grateful for you, you're so nasty, now I can practice, you're my teacher of patience. So even if you just think that when somebody cuts in front of you or says something and it's you're polite and they're rude in return, even to think, oh, thank you, you're my teacher of patience, gets you to laugh about the situation. It releases our initial, of wanting to get back and retaliate. Of course, this does not mean that we should put up with abuse. It doesn't mean that we allow people to cheat us. I mean, we're not stupid. But nonetheless, it does mean that in most situations, just retaliating with anger is not going to solve the problem. They are just going to put up their barrier of anger, and in the end, it just becomes conflict, and nothing is resolved. So, to keep one's cool, and not retaliate in the face of provocation. And to just, take a few deep breaths and okay, we'll deal with this situation more calmly. Often will resolve the situation and not allow it to escalate into something more intense and more difficult. So people think that anger and you hit me, I'll hit you back harder, shows strength. But actually, of course, it is a weakness. Anybody who has to face anger with more anger is just a very weak personality. And to show patience and forbearance and tolerance in the face of other people's bad behavior shows great inner strength. So it's not a weakness to not retaliate. It's an inner strength. And so this is a very important spiritual quality, that we don't get angry every time something displeases us. That's just childish. When children, when something goes their way, they're all happy, smiles, dimples, and the minute that something doesn't go their way, then they're hysterical and angry and furious and really, really upset. And this is because they're children. They are not the masters of their own emotions. And so when something upsets them, they are angry and frustrated and out of control. They're out of control because they're children. And so as we grow older, we should find more skillful ways to deal with our emotions, and also to start growing up, not just outside, but inside. But what often happens is that while we grow outside, inwardly we are still little 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds. That when things are nice, we're all happy, and when things go wrong, not according to how I want them to be, people don't treat me the way I want to be treated, then this little child comes out and starts screaming inside. Even if outside we remain looking, poised. But often, even outside, people don't remain poised. They get upset, they get angry, they start screaming at each other, and really no difference from a 2-year-old. So, in Buddhism, there is a lot of talk about maturing and liberating. So, the Buddha called all us ordinary people the childish, because we are inwardly still children. Our emotions are like children's emotions. We get jealous, we get proud, we get angry, we get happy and friendly. But a lot of our negative emotions are exactly what we started with, and we haven't really dealt with them all our adult life. We might outwardly, intellectually be very clever, but when it comes to our emotions, we are no more in control of them than we were when we were small children. So this is why he called us the childish, because we still react as if we were little children. And so we have to cultivate, mature, grow up, stop being the slaves to all our emotions, and especially to our negative emotions. And one of the most important is that of anger, irritation, aversion, and so forth, that we become the masters of our mind instead of just the slaves of whatever happens to us. So there is a lot of training on how to deal with anger. This is not something which is just a spiritual path. A while back, I was in Guatemala in South America, and in the B&B that we were staying in, there was a little library, and one of the books was this thick, and it was the dummy book on, there are all these dummy books on learning all different sorts of things. Right? This was the dummy book on overcoming anger. So I was very interested. It was a very thick book. And I was very interested to see what their advice was on overcoming anger. And so it was actually a very good book. And for people who tell me that they're having a lot of trouble dealing with anger, I would recommend that book, because although it was dealing with anger, dealing with all techniques for overcoming anger, understanding anger from a psychiatric point of view, but a lot of the techniques were Buddhist. And they, of course, didn't ascribe it, but in fact, that's what they were. That's where they got them from. And from many other ways also. And so, different ways of approaching which might be helpful. And I was quite impressed with the book. I thought that if somebody did have an issue with anger, that something like this, which was secular enough, that you could just take this technique or that technique and really try to work with it, would be very helpful. So the Buddhist approach is to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and also to cultivate patience. Loving kindness, which is making friends with oneself, is always directed first at oneself, because a lot of people who suffer from anger, who are very quickly angry with others, or take on endless social projects in which they get very angry with, like, peace or ecology, and then it's fueled by their anger against people who are not being ecological, or produce wars. But the underlying emotion is still anger. And so we can always find something to be angry about in the world, because there's these things. But it creates, if we undertake a project with anger, what happens is that it creates anger in the opposition, and so there's conflict. I mean, even when people are agitating for peace, if we're doing it from a mindset of anger towards people who don't want peace, then we're just creating the very conflict that we're discussing, that we want to end. I mean, it's not a peaceful mind. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's very important, this whole question of dealing with our own anger. And usually people who are always angry about something, even if it's a worthwhile cause, the reason is because they are not at peace with themselves. And they're angry with themselves for whatever reason. And that anger towards themselves is projected out towards everybody else, or towards worthy causes and so forth. But because the seed is anger, it just creates more anger. It doesn't resolve the situation. And also it clouds our vision, because we don't see things so clearly, how to compromise, how to understand things from the other point of view, how to have a wider view of how to deal with the situation, because it's just focused on this agitation inside. So it's therefore in the Buddhist tradition that one of the first things that people should learn to do is to generate these qualities of love and compassion and rejoicing and equanimity. But the Buddha said, you start with yourself. We have to make friends with ourselves and wish well to ourselves and make peace with ourselves, forgive ourselves, encourage ourselves, recognize, yes, we have problems, who doesn't? And those very problems, those very emotional problems are themselves the path. For example, if we are very angry people, then dealing with that anger, really putting a lot of attention in how to overcome it, could be the path we're walking. Where someone who doesn't have much anger problems, but maybe is quite greedy, they would emphasize how to overcome greed, cultivate contentment and appreciation and generosity and so forth. So whatever is our particular problem, that is also our means for progressing on the path. Because by taking that seriously, how to transform that negativity into something very positive is the path for us. For example, if you go to a gymnasium, then if you see a trainer, the trainer will look and say, well, you know, your legs are okay, but your arms are quite weak, so we're going to work on the arms. And at the same time, we appreciate our legs are quite strong, so that's good. But, you know, now the emphasis is working on the arms. So likewise, as far as our emotions are concerned, yes, we all have faults, yes, we all have weaknesses, but we also have strengths. Things which are easy for us, along with things which are a challenge for us. So therefore also, we have to appreciate the goodness in ourselves, as well as our faults. So we look at the faults, the weeds in the garden, and start using those weeds, pulling them out, maybe using them even for compost. But at the same time, we appreciate the flowers. We don't have a garden just for the sake of pulling out weeds, right? So the garden of our heart we remove the weeds, but we also cultivate, water, fertilize, and appreciate the beauty of the flowers that are growing. So in our heart also, we are not only focusing on what's wrong, but also on our strengths, on things which come easily to us, along with, keeping a balance. So one of the main problems for many, many people is a tendency to get upset and angry and annoyed when things don't go the way we want them to go. So therefore, it's very useful to recognize that there are qualities which we need to develop, for which, if we are angry, we can learn to develop these qualities, and probably those qualities, because we're giving them attention, will become even stronger than for people who don't have that particular problem and therefore didn't need to work on it so hard. Do you understand what I mean? I mean, like if you go to a gym with weak arms, because you're exercising so much, we end up with very strong arms, right? More than someone who doesn't bother to work on their arms because they're sort of okay. So therefore, we shouldn't resent the problems which we have, whatever is our particular weakness, but we should give our attention to that, to strengthen that weakness, to make it strong. So in anger, we really put a lot of attention into cultivating metta, maitri, and karuna, and so forth, along with this quality of patience. Patience means that we don't immediately react by getting all angry and upset, but we step back, take a few deep breaths, see the situation, and try to bring in a level of intelligence into the situation so that we don't get all upset. For me, my object of patience and mind training is the Foreign Registration Office of the police in Dharamshala. And whenever we go in, take a deep breath, right? This is Lojong practice for the day. This is our mind training, patience. One time I was there, and in front of me was a foreign monk. I don't know if he's American or European, something. And there's a grill, and then the officer in those days. And so the officer he had obviously was applying for a visa, so he had filled in 3 or 4 pages of, bureaucracy. And then the policeman said, "No, you did this bit wrong." And he said, "Oh, okay, give me the credit." "No, do it again." And he took all the pages and tore them, and then threw them at the monk, and said, "Do it again." So the monk said, "Okay, please give me fresh papers." And he gave me fresh papers. He said, "Thank you very much." Then he turned and he saw me, and then the monk, he grinned and winked. And he had obviously been studying Lojong, this mind training. And I thought, well done. Yes, because then the officer was very nice to me, right? Because he wasn't upset, he wasn't angry. The monk had absorbed his irritation. Maybe he'd had a hard time. Maybe, his wife and he had a fight, or his children were, not performing well at school. He had worries, this poor officer. So, that's why his irritation was coming out on this poor monk. And by not reacting to his anger, by being upset and angry and reacting in return, it calmed down the officer, so he was okay then. He was very nice to me. And so often we can diffuse the situation just by staying calm and not by getting upset and irate, which just adds oil to the fire. And then they get more upset and we get more upset, and there's a lot of conflict. So just being calm. Okay. I mean, sometimes I think if I get irritated by something or upset, I think, if this was the worst thing happening in this world right now, this would be a paradise. Because most of the things which upset us are really very minor. You know, just people being thoughtless or rude or, you know, self-promoting, but really nothing. Why am I getting upset by them? It's nothing. It's so minor compared with all the awful things which are happening in the world right now. That if we put it into perspective, then instantly we just recognize it's not important enough to get upset about. You know, what bother? So this quality of tolerance and forbearance allows the mind to become very wide and spacious instead of being tight and like a drum. You know, every little tap, it magnifies the sound. You know, if it's soft, then even you beat it, it doesn't make a sound. So I'm not suggesting you allow yourself to be beaten. I mean, as I say, you know, we should stand up to you know, genuine abuse or dishonesty and cheating and so forth, or real corruption. I mean, it's not that we are compliant with that, because the person who is acting in that way themselves are making bad karma, and will probably carry on doing such actions in the future to others as well as to oneself. So, you know, like Tara, we can be fearless, right? And we can stand up for ourselves, and sometimes we have to look quite wrathful and, you know, set boundaries. But to do it, nonetheless, from compassion, that root of compassion, not from the root of anger and you know, desire to harm. So anyway, usually patience is therefore just recognizing that we can, instead of retaliating, we can be calm and see the situation with some clarity, and either not respond at all or to respond in a way which is calming rather than inciting more reactions from the person who is upsetting us. But here, Atisha always puts a little twist on things. And here he says that the supreme patience is to take the lowest place. So, in a number of texts which were written by the followers of Atisha in later centuries, there is an emphasis on taking the lowest place. And I think that in our modern day that has to be interpreted. For one thing, this was written by very high scholars and lamas, mostly for other scholars and lamas, and it probably would be very good for them to take the lowest place occasionally, because they're always placed up high. But essentially what it means is not that we therefore have to think, oh, I'm inferior, I'm useless, I'm hopeless, everybody else is more important than I am, more superior to me, and thereby feeding our low self-esteem. It doesn't mean that. It means that whoever we are with, at that point, they are the most important person, because we are with them. And so we are not thinking, oh, what are they thinking about me? How are they reacting to me? How, me. Our emphasis is on them, on that person, and treating that person with respect, because at that time that's who is with us. So whoever is with us doesn't mean that they have to be outwardly in society regarded as superior, but just because they are another human being in front of us, at that time we show them the respect, and they are the person who at that point is the most important person we are with, because that is the person we are with. And that includes people who in the society would be regarded as being inferior to you, like your servants or your drivers or rickshaw wallahs and so forth, who mostly people ignore. Why ignore? To themselves, they are the most important person in the world. Their families, their problems, their difficulties. And to respect that they have their problems, their aspirations, their hopes, their fears, just as we have hopes and fears and aspirations and anxieties. Where's the difference? Actually, there is very little difference. Maybe one is more affluent, more educated, lives in a nicer house. So what? Maybe they are really very kind people. Maybe they have a lot of problems in their life and they've surmounted it and tried to do the best they can. Who knows what good qualities they have? So it's not a matter of their outer appearance, it's a matter of their inner qualities, which we do not know. Maybe outwardly they appear a little rough, but we don't know what they've been through. And so to respect the fact that on their side they also have, many struggles, many challenges, and even if sometimes they are difficult and rough, so what? It's because of causes and conditions which have made them like that. So therefore, not to get angry, not to, pull one's rank, but to be understanding and open and respectful of everybody. Everybody. One of the problems in society is this hierarchical idea, which of course in India is very there. And, one thing is, we all have Buddha nature. Buddha nature means the ultimate nature of the mind beyond the duality of self and others. Right? They were singing about it last night. Right? All genuine spiritual traditions recognize this. That there is a level of our being, which is our true nature, which is beyond all duality, where there is no self and other, where the mind is open and all-inclusive. And every sentient being possesses this nature, which in the Tibetan tradition is called our primordial awareness, which is the culmination of our wisdom and compassion. Its very nature is love and wisdom. It's who we really are. We don't understand who we really are, and we identify with all the wrong things. But the point is that we all have that nature, all beings, not just human beings, animals, insects, fish, birds. It is obscured, like the sky during monsoon, where all you see are clouds, you don't see the sky. But the sky is there, the clouds could not exist if it were not for the sky. The clouds come out of the sky, go back into the sky. No sky, no clouds, no anything. Because the sky is space. Space, as we said yesterday, is all pervading. We are all space. But we don't recognize. So we don't recognize the non-dual level of our being. But we all possess it. And in Mahayana Buddhism, it's called our Buddha nature. Doesn't mean we each have a little Buddha sitting inside us. But it means that the very qualities of wisdom, understand, seeing things how they really are and not the way we project it with our dualistic intelligence. All of us possess this. So where is high and low? Maybe somebody who looks very nothing is closer to their true nature than all of us, also clever and intelligent and well-fed. How do we know? In India and also in medieval times around the world, many of the greatest saints outwardly appeared like beggars. I mean, everybody is very devoted to Shirdi Sai Baba, but look how he looked. If you met him on the road, you would think he was nobody. And many of the great Mahasiddhas in the Tantric tradition lived outside of society and will be considered kind of crazy by, respectable people living in their respectable, housing estates. So we should not judge, and we should show all beings respect, because all beings in their true nature have this great potential of vast wisdom and love, which we all possess. We all possess, but it's covered over what by our clinging to this ego, to this self. And all genuine spiritual traditions, not just Hindu and Buddhist, but also Christian, Sufi, and Jewish, all of them understand that. In their mystics, all say the same thing, that the divine is within us, we don't see it, we are obscured by our sense of me and mine. And so this is why he says here that the supreme tolerance and forbearance is to take the lowest place. In other words, to respect everyone. And not to think that we are superior and something special. But our tolerance, our forbearance is open because we recognize all beings have this great inner potential. It's just we don't recognize it. So all beings are worthy of respect. In Tantra, for example, if one is practicing the sadhana of Tara, then one not only sees oneself as Tara and realizes she represents our true nature. She is who we really are, if only we could recognize that. It's not that we are pretending to be Tara. We are Tara, but we don't know it. But not just I am Tara, all beings are Tara. It's not I'm Tara and you're just a sentient being. Right? We, from that, radiates lights and transforms all sentient beings into Tara. So it's this understanding that we do not recognize our own potential, and that we don't recognize the potential of all other beings. So therefore to show respect and kindness to all beings, and not to get upset and angry, but to show, to put ourselves as the least important. The other beings are the most important because all of them have this great potential to awake. But, at the moment we're all obscured. So, the next one he says is the supreme effort is to let go of all activity. And that's a cute one too. I love Atisha, really. I think he has a great sense of humor. It's not mentioned, but I think he does. Because we think, supreme effort is, even on the spiritual path, how this to go, go get that, as if it was a marathon. And of course, the mantra is always let go. And that includes all outer striving for the goal, because the goal is already within us. We don't have to strive to get it, we just have to recognize it. It's not out there, it's inside. So really what we need is to look in the right direction, which is within ourselves, because that's where everything lies. It's not out there somewhere on the horizon. It's within us. We drop everything, especially our ego, then our true nature is just waiting for us. It's just waiting to be recognized. So I asked a learned scholar and very realized monk, Lama, who I know, what does this mean? The supreme effort is to let go of all activity. And he said it means worldly activity. So then I was thinking, what is worldly activity? because obviously you can't leave your work, your jobs, your family, everything, and go forth and just, not be engaged in worldly activities. So what is it? What makes an activity worldly rather than dharmic? And I thought, what makes a activity worldly is distraction. If we are distracted, then even a seeming dharma activity is worldly. If we have awareness and mindfulness, attention, then even a seeming worldly activity is a dharma activity. I will explain. There is a Vietnamese master called Thich Nhat Hanh. And he, in one of his books, explains that there are two ways to wash dishes. I don't know, maybe you all have servants and you never wash dishes, but you get the idea. Either we wash dishes to get clean dishes, or we wash dishes to wash dishes. And so most people wash dishes in order to get clean dishes. So while this applies to any activity, you understand, but they're using washing dishes as the example. So mostly people do something in order to get a result. So the actual action of doing it is not important. The importance is the result. So we wash dishes to get clean dishes. So while we're washing dishes, we're thinking about, well, after I finish this and I'll have a cup of tea and a biscuit, and then, I have to go shopping now. What do we need for lunch? What do we need for dinner? Oh, and tomorrow somebody's coming. So meantime we're washing dishes, but our mind is in the future, or else we're thinking about something which happened yesterday or 10 years ago. We're in the past. The one place the mind is not is on the dishes. So at the end we get clean dishes. Then we sit down and we have our cup of tea, but after the first sip, then we're thinking about what we need to do now. I really must remember to buy this, and we're out of that, and blah, 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 blah. And then, we go shopping, and then, we're thinking about cooking, and then we're cooking, we're thinking about... And so, in other words, we spend our whole day never being where we are. And we get stressed. Or we can wash dishes to wash dishes. And that means that while we're washing the dishes, we stand at the sink, we relax, and we're conscious just of washing the dishes. No past, no future. We are washing dishes, and we are completely mindful of the act of the feel of the water, the feel of the soap suds, washing, placing them. And as he says at the end, you don't just get clean dishes, you get a nice clean mind. The mind is relaxed and present and centered. Now that is a dharma activity. If we wash dishes just to get clean dishes, that is a worldly activity. If we bring our awareness, our presence into our action, then that action is a dharma action, right? It's a spiritual practice. So that's the difference. If our mind is distracted, even if we're sitting saying mantras, with a distracted mind, it's useless. If we have a centered mind, then it will have benefits. So this is the point. And as he said, if you wash dishes to wash dishes, then when you sit to drink the tea, we're aware of the taste of the tea the whole way through, not just the first sip and then we're thinking of something else. I mean, we can be eating the most delicious desserts, cake, biscuit. After the first bite, second bite, we're thinking of something else. And then suddenly, whoa, it's gone. So most people live their whole life that way. We're either in the past or the future, running around in the present. We're never actually experiencing what is happening within our bodies, within our mind. Now, if we can learn, this is why now, of course, in the West, and more in India, mindfulness is the big buzzword in psychiatric circles as well as now in the workplace. You know, people like Google and other big organizations organize, mindfulness courses for their people. And also now mindfulness and meditation is being taught in the military, in prisons, in the police, and definitely in schools. Because it is recognized that we are wearing ourselves out because we cannot be attentive. We have such a short attention span now. And that is what is wearing us out. Not the amount of work we accomplish. I read an article in The Economist, which is a British magazine on economy and politics. It's not a Dharma magazine. But it was a report from neuroscientists on the problem of multitasking. And the neuroscientists are saying that the brain, the human brain, is not intended to multitask, that it creates inefficiency, mistakes, a lot of stress, and also quite superficial thinking, because there's no time to go deeper and be more creative. So therefore, it doesn't work. It's not that people accomplish more, but they accomplish what they accomplish badly. And that therefore the solution is to, whatever task you're on, to give it your full attention, however long or short that time may be, before passing on to the next thing and giving that more attention. That works. The mind stays centered and doesn't get stressed. We give our full attention to what we're doing, and at the same time, then it gives an opportunity for it to go beyond the mere superficial and become more genuinely creative. And at the end of this article, it was a long article bringing in many different points and many different researchers from around the world by neuroscientists and sociologists and so forth. He said, well, what is the solution to this problem? And he said the solution is to take a course in mindfulness and do a meditation retreat. So that was in The Economist. So that's how mainstream these ideas have become. Before, they were very esoteric and people thought you were definitely weird. Maybe not in India, but in the West. But nowadays, even in the West, if you say you're doing a meditation course, even in a business firm, people will not think you're weird. They'll say, oh, which one? And start telling you about ones they've done. So this is a good side of it. But anyway, the point is that a worldly activity means any activity which we do not do with attention. If we undertake any activity with a distracted mind, doing one thing and thinking another, then it is useless, it's worldly. So when he says, therefore, that the supreme effort is to let go, the supreme effort is to put our attention into what we are doing at the time we are doing it, and do it wholeheartedly. Then, actually, that action is effortless, because our attention is merged with the activity. The effort, the sense of fatigue from straining comes because we are not single-pointed. And so that is very tiring for the body, but mostly for the mind. That's why people stress out. It's not because they're doing that much. It's because what they're doing, they're not centered in doing. Their attention is not there. So then we just, the brain gets very fatigued very easily. But if our body, speech and mind are all in one, if we are completely present with what we are doing, then the mind is not stretched, it doesn't become stressed, and we can accomplish much more. So this ability to be attentive, to be more concentrated and mindful, is the way to transform all our actions into a spiritual practice. So you can be washing dishes with attention, it's a spiritual practice. Or cooking, chopping vegetables. If we do it with attention and care, it's a spiritual practice. You can be sitting in the mandir, saying our mantras, but we're thinking about something else outside, and that is just a worldly activity and of no benefit. So everything depends on the mind and our ability to bring our awareness into our actions of body, speech and mind. This is why at the beginning he says to observe our mind. But we also can start by observing the body. The Buddha said you start with physical postures. Being, when you're standing, you know you're standing. When you're walking, you know you're walking. You're sitting, you know you're sitting. When you're lying down, you know you're lying down. So if it's difficult to, concentrate on more subtle actions, at least we can be aware of the movement of the body. Usually when we walk, we're thinking 2,000 things, none of it to do with walking. So, it's very simple. All we have to do is walk and know we're walking. Feel the walking, the body, the posture, the feeling of the ground beneath our feet. It's how to train the mind. And the mind benefits. The problem for us is that our minds are out of control, and the problem for the whole world is that we are controlled by people whose minds are out of control. Which is terrifying. And getting worse. Look at the leaders. Darcel is in a state of panic about her leader, Trump, and what is happening there. The death of democracy, she calls it. So, these people who are in control are themselves not in control. They're not in control of themselves at all. And so, this is a great danger for our whole planet. We cannot deal with their minds, but we can deal with our own mind. And we can start with very simple things. Just becoming more conscious of our body, of our movement, of our posture, of our action. Then if we are aware, everything we do is a practice, helping us to really tame, train, transform, and finally transcend our own mind. So this is how we make our daily life into our spiritual practice. If we are aware, then it is a Dharma practice. If we are not aware, then it is worldly activity. The supreme concentration is not altering the mind. So again, he is, most people think concentration is what is, stopping all our thoughts, developing one-pointed attention, being many of the meditations which some of you have undertaken are very structured to make the attention very tight, moment attention. But in the Tibetan system, it is about, you have any problem? It is about relaxing the mind while keeping the focus. So it's not about altering the mind, it's about knowing the mind. So we don't have to stop our thoughts and our thinking. Many people think that meditation is about somehow blanking out, not thinking, that thoughts are the enemy. But thoughts are not the enemy. Our lack of attention is the enemy, if you have an enemy. Our lack of awareness of the thoughts is the problem, not the thoughts. I mean, as human beings, our superiority to the other animals is only that we have more intelligence. We are able to think and conceive and plan and so forth. I mean, we have that ability because we have certain parts of our brain. Most of our brain is the same as an animal's brain, but we have a bit more. We have the neocortex. And that gives us our superiority as far as intelligence is concerned. But, so therefore, our ability to think is a wonderful privilege. I mean, there's nothing wrong with thinking. The problem is that we are not aware of thinking. We are carried along by the thoughts instead of just able to step back and observe the thoughts. So, therefore, it's not a matter of changing the mind, of altering the mind. It's a matter of knowing the mind. So, in the practice is about cultivating our ability to relax the mind, make it spacious, not tight, not tense, not forcing the mind into a certain, structure. It's very important, this is very important, that we don't make the mind tense and tight. If people try to force the mind into concentrating, then what happens is that you get this kind of chronic imbalance of it. And people can get very sick from doing that. There's a reaction because we're forcing. And the mind becomes too tense, too tight. And so rather than that, it's better to allow the mind to relax and be spacious, open, but at the same time, focus. The example is of a large bird, like an eagle or a lammergauer, kite. If you think of big birds, little birds, they're like this, they have to flap their wings a lot to keep up. But big birds, once they're up, they're just floating. They're kept up by the undercurrent, effortlessly floating. But they're not sweet. They're very sharply focused. So that is the kind of mind that we try to cultivate, which is very open, spacious, relaxed, effortless, but completely awake. So that the thoughts come and go, doesn't happen. We're not trying to change the mind. The mind will change of itself. We don't have to change it. We don't have to try to alter the mind. As we become more aware and more open and relaxed and spacious of itself. So this is why he said that the supreme meditation is not about altering the mind. It's about knowing the mind. And as our attention, our awareness grows stronger, then of itself the mind will, as I say, slow down and also get much more in order. It's not so jumbled and crazy. It becomes not this raging waterfall, the Niagara Falls. It's not even a raging river in monsoon. It begins to slow down like a slow-moving river. But we don't have to try to do that. We can't do that. That will actually harm us. What we need is just, we don't have to worry about the thoughts. That's the point. We don't, especially in formal meditation, we don't have to worry about the thoughts. Thoughts can take care of themselves. What we are developing is the ability to be aware. And that is why we start by something easy to be aware of, like the breath. It's hard to be aware of our thoughts when our thoughts are maniacal thoughts. When the thoughts are so swift, we can't catch one from another. So we don't give our attention to that at the beginning. We give our attention to the breath, because the breath is very measured. We breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out. And as our attention to the breath becomes more focused, then the breath of itself begins to slow down somewhat. You might even see with people with deeper concentration that it's stopped altogether, but the breath just is the rhythm. And because our breath and mind states are connected, as the breath becomes more calm and our awareness of the breath becomes deeper, then in the background the television begins to get, muted, and the mind begins to slow down. We don't need to stop it. Sometimes thoughts appear to disappear for a time, then they come back. But the question is not whether we are thinking or not thinking, but are we aware? Because what we are cultivating is the ability to know, to witness, to observe. As I said yesterday, the ability to witness the mind or the body or our actions is not ultimate reality, because it is still subject and object, a subject observing the object, but it's still dualistic. But nonetheless, it's a big step forward. If we regard our ordinary thinking mind, chatter, chatter, chatter in the background, as our gross mind, then the ability to observe, the mindfulness, the awareness, is a more subtle mind, a more subtle consciousness. And it gives a space in our mind, a silence in the mind, even though on the periphery is all this chatter. But between that and the observer is this space of silence. So this is already a big step forward and helps us not to have stress and to have a more silent mind, even if while we're making use of our thinking mind, we are not immersed in it anymore. We can make use of it like a tool, but we are not identified with it anymore because we can step outside and observe it. Then behind that is the very subtle mind, which is sometimes described as being empty, because you can't grasp it, you can't see it, like space. So it's empty, because it's not something solid that you can identify. But unlike space, it is knowing. It is the fundamental knowing quality, cognitive quality of the mind. We know. Unless we are unconscious, we are conscious. That is what makes us who we are. We can function because we are conscious, because there is a knowing quality to the mind. Sometimes that is called luminosity or clarity, or sometimes luminous clarity. But it is the cognitive quality of our mind, the fact that we are conscious. We are all conscious, but normally we are not conscious of being conscious. So this level of consciousness, the primal level, is non-dualistic. At that level there is no sense of, there is perception, but there is no perceiver. And so that level is totally effortless, because there is no one to make an effort. That is our primal level of our mind, which is this empty clarity, which cannot be produced, but it just has to be recognized. And so the bridge between that very subtle consciousness and the gross consciousness is the subtle consciousness of awareness and mindfulness. That leads down, as the mind also, from another point of view, as we observe the mind in formal meditation especially, and the mind grows quieter and slower, then between the past thought and the future thought, there is a gap, like clouds. If we look at the clouds in the sky, thick clouds, but if we keep looking, then the clouds might separate and we see the blue sky. And so that glimpse of blue sky before the clouds fold up again is the same as a vast open spaciousness in space, which normally we don't recognize. So it's a glimpse into the nature of the mind. And then after that, the whole point is to make those glimpses more frequent and of longer duration. But the one thing which we can all practice in order to make that a very much more substantial experience is to develop our ability to be aware. And for that, daily life is no problem, because we, when we walk, we can know we're walking. That's up to us. Nobody can do it for you. Even the greatest guru in the world can't do it for us. I mean, the Buddha said, Buddha's only showing the way. You have to walk it yourself. Nobody is going to walk it for us. So just hoping that the perfect guru is going to come, zap its fingers, and it's all going to be there, is just out of our laziness, because we don't want to have to make the effort. So, the supreme effort is to let go of all activity, and the supreme concentration is not altering the mind, it's knowing the mind. Supreme wisdom is not to grasp onto anything as a self. And he dealt with this in the beginning, where he said the supreme learning is the meaning of selflessness. And later he says the supreme remedy is to know that nothing has any self-nature. So here again, because the supreme paramita is the prajna paramita, so he deals with it again. The supreme understanding, the supreme wisdom is not to grasp onto anything as having a self-identity from its own side. Buddhist philosophy is very concerned with this. I mean, it's been 15, 20 years studying the whole idea of that nothing has any self-identity that you can point out as self-existing from its own side. So this is called, in Buddhist parlance, shunyata, or emptiness. It doesn't mean that nothing exactly exists, but it doesn't exist the way we perceive it. And so both ourselves, with our sense of self-identity, and as we dealt yesterday with this idea that we have that we are autonomous enduring entity within us somewhere, which is me, in contradistinction to everybody else out there who are you, is our fundamental ignorance. And so this question of who am I, as I said, is like peeling off layer after layer, looking for this I that we pivot our whole universe around. But if we look for it, we can never find it. Where is this I? But if we look for it and keep undoing the layers of false identification, then the whole structure, the whole psychic structure falls apart and we open up into a much deeper level of awareness, which is our primordial awareness, which is our true nature, which connects us with all beings. Our sense of I divides us, separates us from everything else, from other people, from animals, from nature, from everything. But when we actually contact our true nature, then that is what brings us into a sense of interconnection with all beings. We're all part of the web. And likewise, outwardly, we also solidify everything and make things to be real and self-existing from their own side. And again, a lot of the scholarly approach is to take something and say, well, what is this? Well, it's a clock. Well, where is the clockness of the clock? It's part of the clock, well, that's the face. Well, what about this part? Well, those are the hands. Well, what about this part? What about that part? And dividing it up, trying to find the clockness of the clock, and recognizing that it's really just a combination of many, many different factors all coming together, and then we stick a label on it and think that it's self-existing from its own side, whereas if you look for the thing in itself, you never can find it. People spend years on this. But the idea is to recognize that how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive outer reality is not how it really exists on its own side. And so when I first went to get my first lesson from an old yogi who was at our monastery, he said to me, the table, is it empty? So I said, yes. Do you see it as empty? No. The mind, is it empty? Yes. Do you see it as empty? No. So what is in here? You see the table as empty, or mind is empty? So I said, oh, mind. And he said, okay, you belong to us. And I said, if I said table? He said, then I send you to Serra Monastery down the road. Because Serra Monastery is debates and scholasticism, right? So the scholars, the philosophers deal with empty tables, the meditators deal with empty minds, right? So that is the main difference. But if you realize the empty mind, you realize empty out. If you realize empty out, you can easily understand empty mind. So it's a different way of dealing with it. In our nunnery, I tried to get the nuns to meditate because they're doing a lot of philosophy. And I think it's important that they realize it's not just empty out there, it's empty inside also. So if you have the both the scholastic basis and the mind basis, then that's very, very best. But when I went to, one time I went to see His Holiness Dalai Lama's junior tutor called Tujang Rinpoche. So His Holiness had two main tutors, one was Ling Rinpoche, one was Tujang Rinpoche, this is previous Tujang. And he said to me, who's your Lama? And I said, come to Rinpoche. So he said, Kagyu. Yes, we're in a Kagyu tradition. In Tibetan Buddhism has 4 traditions, and each one has their own emphasis. Some are more scholastic, some are more yogic. And the Kagyu tradition is a more yogic tradition. Our main founders were all yogis. And so he said, yes, Kagyu. So the thing with the Kagyus is they practice. That's the thing with the Kagyus. Then he turned to his secretary and he said, at the end of life, what is going to benefit us most? A head full of book knowledge or genuine realization in the heart? And he said, actually, we all study too much. The important thing is to understand the basic principles, then go away and practice and realize it. And so, therefore, in this modern world where, most people don't have time for very, very intensive scholasticism, just to understand the basic principles and then go away and incorporate that into our daily life, and especially understanding the mind, that's enough. Because then at the time of death, that's all we need. We don't need to understand, 50 different philosophical systems. What we have to understand is our own mind, and to bring our mind back into the very subtle consciousness at the time of death. That's what will liberate us, not mere theory, but the actual practice. So all of you, there is no excuse. Because as long as we are breathing and we are conscious, we can practice. It's not just when we're in retreat that we practice. Retreat helps us to begin to program our mind a little more, and it gives us a space to go deeper. But if we can only practice when we're in retreat, and as soon as we come out of retreat, the whole thing falls apart, it's not very useful. And therefore, it's important to have a practice which we can carry around in time. One could, for example, practice mantra. And if you have a specific mantra, then keep it going in your heart all the time. Repeating all the time. And that also will work at helping us to divide our thoughts from the inner center, which is the mantra, and then the awareness. The mind will split if we keep the mantra going continually, inwardly. It starts in the head, and then it will go down drop into the heart, and of itself will just keep reverberating. And when that does that, then it will create again this ability to observe the mind. The mind is there as it were, it's not. But the mind is, the thoughts are here, the mantra is there, and then there is the knowing. So this is also a skillful way of creating the ability to observe the thoughts by keeping the mantra there. It creates a space inside. And despite the sound of the mantra in the sound, it is within the silence. So there are many ways. While you are working, while you are doing whatever you're doing, you can also keep this inner sound going. So there are many ways to use your daily life as your practice. This is the most important thing, to recognize that daily life is practice. Cultivating generosity, cultivating patience, cultivating kindness, compassion, respect, contentment. So many qualities of the heart for which we need other people. They are the people who are helping us to practice. And even if they are difficult, they are also helping us. So we shouldn't make an excuse that we have no time to practice. The texts themselves sometimes, confuse us. Because in the Buddhist texts, which were written by monks for other monks, First thing you do is you leave behind your family and everybody and you go and live up on top of the mountain. And of course, even in Tibet, very few people actually did that. But it gave people the idea that our ordinary daily life is therefore a waste of time and just worldly activity, and then people would feel very guilty. But in fact, the point is not what we're outwardly doing, but how we are doing it inside. I mean, we can be living in a monastery and have the most worldly mind, I assure you. And I often say to our nuns that merely shaving your head, putting on robes doesn't make you a nun. It doesn't make you a Dharma practitioner. It's your inner state that makes you a Dharma practitioner. And many people who are, in the ordinary life and with, married with families and working very hard, they are far better practitioners than many of the monks and nuns, you might say. It's the quality of the mind that counts, not external activities. So everybody here can practice. And as I say, it's not just when you go to formal retreats or when you come to Dharma center or go to the temples, then we're being ever so spiritual. When we go home and we're just as bad-tempered and as frustrated and as upset and agitated as ever, then what's the use? So, it's very important to recognize that, genuine spirituality is in the heart. It's not in our outer mode or what we're doing, but how we do it and how much attention and open-heartedness. We have the word mindfulness in English. And of course, to be mindful is very, very important. The Buddha said it's the one way to liberation. But along with it, we have to have an open heart, which is kind. So someone invented the word kindfulness. And that's what we have to cultivate. We have to be kindful. Kind and mindful both. Someone else described it as loving awareness. And he said that our mantra should be, I am loving awareness. So, especially in difficult situations, to repeat to ourselves, I am loving awareness, I am loving awareness. Just to remind ourselves, that's our true nature. That's who we really are. However upset, irritable, and self-obsessed we may be, or however challenged we may be by our outer circumstances, in the depths of our heart, we are loving awareness. And we should remind ourselves of this, encourage ourselves to remember that's our true nature. All our irritation, upset, anger, pride, jealousy, anything is just like the tarnish on a silver pot. If we have a silver pot, all analogies, you have to take it for what they are. Right? We're not silver pots. But if we regard our true nature as like a silver pot, then after a while, if we don't do anything, it gets tarnished. So it goes brown and then it gets black. And then when we look at the pot, we think, oh, this is an ugly black pot. But if we start polishing it, eventually we can remove the tarnish, and the silver pot itself has never been polluted. This is the point, right? The tarnish is on the outside. It never ever affects the silver. So even when they open up these archaeological sites and find all this jewelry, or when they find all these artifacts which are thousands of years old and have never been dealt with, and of course, so much of it is black. But then when they polish it, even though it hasn't been polished for thousands of years, then it shows its true nature again. You know, the silver is still silver. It never is impregnated by the tarnish. The tarnish is always on the outside. So that's what we should remember. No matter how difficult things may be, and how difficult we have, personality problems or whatever with ourselves or with others, with a bit of polishing, we come up all bright and shiny again. Because that's our true nature. We are loving awareness. That is our nature. We don't have to create it. We have to recognize it and uncover it. It's always there. Another example is of a beggar who lives in this hovel, in this very, very little mud hut. But under the ground there is buried a treasure. And he doesn't know that. So he goes out every day and just gets a few rupees and thinks himself rich. But all the time, he's a crorepati. He just doesn't know that. But if he stopped going out always thinking he has to get all his wealth from others and started digging down in the right place, he would discover he has this endless wealth inside. He just thinks he's a beggar. So we think we are flawed beings, but all the time, within us, in the depths of our being, we have this perfect nature of wisdom, of understanding, of genuine love. It just flows. It's not that we have to create it, it's that we have to discover it and bring it up. So every action of spontaneous compassion and love that you feel is a call from our inner nature, our true nature. And this is why all of you who are engaged in work in which is so much compassion and patience required, it's very good because it's calling up from the depths of our being our true identity, which is loving kindness and compassion. It's not that we have to take it from somewhere else. We have it inside. And with all due respect to gentlemen, I think the women have a big advantage because the nature intended women to be the nurturers. They're the mothers, they're the ones who protect the household, they're the ones who have to bring up the children. So women are naturally in tune with these emotions. So when they feel emotional about love or compassion or caring, they don't feel guilty about that. Whereas poor men are taught from youth that they mustn't show emotions and big boys don't cry. And they're taught to suppress their emotions, which is very painful. And therefore it's harder for them. They have to do all these meditations to try to reconnect with their true emotions, which are there, but which they've been taught as children to suppress. But girls are not taught to suppress, so they're very lucky because we're already in tune with these emotions and we don't feel guilty about them. So we have a big advantage there, right? To be in contact with our true nature, which is compassion. So anyway, but the wisdom side of it is that we don't grasp onto anything as being substantially self-existing from its own side. That, as I said yesterday, nowadays neuroscientists themselves are saying that so much of what we perceive as a reality outside of ourselves is actually a product of our own mental system. And things do not exist the way we see them to exist. And so, therefore, the point there is that therefore we shouldn't grasp too tightly. That we should hold things, as I said, gently, lightly, respectfully, but not killing them through our attachment. Because it's our clinging mind which causes all the problems and causes our suffering. So recognizing that things do not exist from their own side in the way that we perceive them, and that we do not exist from our side as we perceive ourselves to be, that our true nature is so much more fantastic than anything which we perceive ourselves on an ordinary level to be. The reason why Tara and all the great Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are so compassionate is because they perceive our true nature, and then they see what we do with it, and our huge potential as human beings, and how normally we waste our human life. And so they feel so sad for us, because we all have such potential, and we don't know how to recognize our potential. And how sad that is. That's why when we talk about compassion, we're not just compassion for sad little puppies, but for all of us, however outwardly prosperous and happy we might appear, very, very few people are really actualizing their potential. And, we waste over and over again our opportunity as human beings. That's why the Buddha and Bodhisattvas have such compassion and are totally non-judgmental. Because they also recognize we are beings of our karma and our delusions. And they try to help, but they don't judge. And they certainly never ever would think of punishing. There's nothing about punishing, but it's about having so much compassion. As all of you, those of you who are working with those who have, mental difficulties, you're not judging them, and you're certainly not punishing them for their mistakes. You're loving them all the more. The more difficulties they have, the more compassion. So this is also likewise for those who have genuine wisdom. They just feel so much compassion for the rest of us who are doing the best we can, but we don't see things how they really are. So that's why the supreme wisdom is not to grasp onto anything as self-existent from its own side. Let go. Just hold lightly without just grasping. The grasping side of the mind is what causes the pain. If we can just accept and hold gently and carefully without needing to hold on tightly, then we feel inner release, and we begin to understand much more clearly our true nature. So to really see things how they really are in Buddhism is considered to be wisdom. So then he says, the supreme spiritual teacher is the one who exposes our hidden flaws, and the supreme instruction is the one that strikes those hidden flaws. So again, when we are thinking of a teacher, just an ordinary teacher, a musical teacher teaching us how to play a musical instrument, or how to hit a ball in cricket, or how to do anything. If that teacher is only flattering us so that we will keep, paying for them to be our teacher, and never shows us where we are doing things wrong, that is not a good teacher. We all know that. We rely on a teacher not only to encourage us, but especially to show us where we're doing things not correctly. Because they are hidden flaws insofar as we don't see it. For example, if we are playing an instrument, at the beginning, when we will hold it and use it in a way which feels most comfortable, but maybe the way that feels most comfortable initially is not the right way to hold the instrument. And we need someone to say, no, don't hold it like that, you have to hold it like this, don't put your fingers like that, you have to put your fingers like that, and so forth. We wouldn't know that, because we naturally will do what feels easiest. But maybe what feels easiest is not the best. And so therefore we rely on a teacher or a trainer to point out what we're not doing right. And, you know, they are not seeking popularity. They are seeking to help us. And in order to help us, they need to point out things what we're not doing properly, we're not doing right. So a good teacher can scold us. Of course, I think also we should take into concern that if they only scold us and they never encourage us, then that is also not a good teacher, quite frankly. Because, you know, there are certain teachers who like scolding and it gives them a sense of superiority. And so it's always easy to point out people's faults. And, you know, they never encourage the goodness in us, then that would also not be a good teacher. He's not mentioning that bit. But, of course, a good teacher sees things properly. They see the problems and they point those out, which is very, very important. But, of course, they also encourage us with what we're doing right and, you know, allow us to feel a sense of, you know, that we have potential. If they're only telling us what's wrong, then we end up with very low self-esteem and low self-confidence. But if they're only praising us, then also we lack confidence, because we can, sometimes also we can see our faults, and if they haven't mentioned that, what's wrong with them? Because why are they not noticing? What kind of teacher? You know? So we need a teacher who, a genuine teacher should understand us better than we understand ourselves. And this is why we trust them. Because we hope and trust that they know more and they can see us more clearly than we can see ourselves, because we are very biased when we look at ourselves. And so therefore they can see clearly where we are making mistakes, and also they can see clearly where we are doing well. And they can point these out for us so that we can see it clearly for ourselves. And at one time we can correct our mistakes, but at the same time we're encouraged by, you know, those things which come to us quite easily. So that would be a good teacher. A good teacher is one who not only exposes our faults, but also encourages our goodness in us, so that we don't lose hope, and that we have the trust. This is the reason that we need a teacher. It doesn't have to be the heart guru, but it can be just an ordinary teacher, but nonetheless, that teacher we have to trust that they do know more than we know. And therefore they're able to see the whole situation much more clearly than we can see, and be a good guide on the path. I mean, as I said yesterday, when it comes to a guide, we have to believe that they trust that they actually know where they're going, because they themselves have been there. Merely reading a guidebook or, you know, using a GPS is not enough. We need to have the confidence that they have experienced what they are teaching, and that they know what they are teaching, so that they are a genuine guide for us. But it doesn't have to mean that they are, you know, 12 level bodhisattvas. Even somewhat more than we know is already very helpful. Otherwise, you know, we can spend all our life looking for the perfect teacher, and meantime time goes by and we haven't acquired even very simple. For example, when you're a child and you go to kindergarten, you don't need a PhD to be your teacher. We just need someone who's trained to be a good kindergarten teacher, who is educated and probably has a BA, but especially has teacher's training, and can teach children how to learn to read, you know, the alphabet and very, very simple books. Then, as we get more advanced, we expect people to have, you know, degrees in whatever subject we are learning. And then when we go to college, we expect our teachers to be at least MAs and PhDs. So at each level, We don't need a PhD to teach kindergarten. Maybe they might not even be good at it. I mean, it just, everybody has their own level. So sometimes to have someone who's not too advanced and therefore can identify with our own problems is more useful. So likewise in the spiritual realm, we don't have to look for, a high level, Buddha or Bodhisattva. We just need to have someone at the beginning who has done the practice, knows what the practice is, knows the different problems that are going to come up and how to deal with them, and that's enough. And then as we get more advanced, we will naturally attract more advanced teachers. But at the beginning, while we're just learning how to concentrate, how to look at the mind, how to look at the breath, we don't need, highly advanced level teachers for that. So, as we said yesterday when dealing with the teacher, the important thing is just to start from where we are and get a good foundation, and then gradually that will attract to us teachers who will teach us what we need to know next. And so even if we don't meet with, an actual heart guru, it doesn't really matter so much. We can advance step by step, and as we need it, the teachings will come to us. It's, I think it's very important just to get started. And then, as we need it, the instruction will come. Especially if we have really tried, we have already digested what we've learned, then the next phase will spontaneously appear to us. The teaching we need will come. And so we shouldn't wait for the perfect teacher to arrive. We should just get on with it. So, yes. So, anyway, and the instruction also, he's saying the supreme instruction is that it points out our faults. Again, we need to see, make sure that we're following the right path and that we are not deviating. This is why people who make up their own meditations, maybe that's not so wise, because we tend to create a system which suits us, and maybe what suits us is not always what is best for us. And so this is one of the reasons for having a teacher, is that they don't always tell you to do the thing which is what we would like to do. And they may teach us the thing which we need to do. So this again is why we need to have a teacher that we trust, so that if they tell us to do something which we personally would never chosen for ourselves, we have the faith that we will do it anyway and reap the benefits. Otherwise, we tend to, especially in the West, where there are so many different schools, so many different methods, so many different approaches, people tend to, like in a buffet, they choose those bits which they like and stick them all together. But you might end up with indigestion. And you probably also choose all the wrong kind of food, right? Because that's the food we like. It might not be the food which is best for us. And so likewise, on a spiritual journey, sometimes if we take too many different things from too many different places, we tend to select those things which feel most comfortable and don't push our barriers. And so in that way, we don't really evolve, we just keep running around. Whereas if we have a teacher who really is skillful and can see, then they can advise us, like a doctor, a dietitian. They will tell us to eat these kinds of food because those kinds of food will agree with your constitution, and don't eat those kind of food. And maybe the kind of food you're told not to eat is exactly the kind of food we like best. And the food we're told to eat is the ones we would never personally choose. And so this is what I'm saying, that this is what he means also, that we cannot rely on just doing those things which we give us pleasure, because sometimes those are exactly what we should not be doing. And what we should be doing is what we would never decide for ourselves. And this is where a teacher is very useful, if they are skillful. And they will also then, a skillful teacher will, they will, like a trainer in a gymnasium, they will suit the program for the person. So there's not a universal program for everybody. Different people, when I was with my Lama, when we were many, many years ago, I had a few Dharma sisters, and we were all with the same teacher. And so in those days, we each would go separately for instruction. We would sometimes come together to create empowerment, and then we would get each one separately the instruction on how to practice that empowerment. And of course, naturally, when we all got together, we would all discuss what we were told. And it was all different. And I could see that they were tailoring it to the individual. One person was told, oh, don't try to see it too clearly, just get a vague feeling of it. And so then I would go and say, oh, so I just need to get a vague feeling. No, see it very precisely, very carefully, very, the opposite of what my Dharma sister just heard. So that is a skillful teacher who will see what that person needs. If that person is too tight, they will say, be more loose. If you're too loose, they will say, go tight. Ajahn Chah, who was a great Thai master, he always told his students never to discuss his instruction with each other. Because he said, one of them, he would say, go left, go left. And the next one he would say, go right, go right. And when they met, they'd say, this guy's confused. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He told me to go left, told me to go right. And Ajahn Chah said, I'm looking in the middle, and I can see you're going right, so I say, go left. Or if you're going left, I say, go right. This is why you shouldn't discuss between yourselves what is being told, because each one is for that person. So when you're in a situation where you have a personal relationship with the teacher, then a skilled teacher will direct each one in accordance with their needs, and not in accordance also with what we think we need. They will tell us to do things which we would not have considered, but which the teacher can see would be most beneficial. But still there are general principles which all of us can follow, even if they're, we have been taught as a group. And one of it is this ability to keep the mind relaxed, but at the same time to keep it focused and present. That can not harm anybody. Everybody can benefit from relaxing. Making the mind spacious, not tight, but at the same time being completely present and focused. So here he says, the supreme companions are mindfulness and alertness. So in other words, these are the friends that we should keep with us at all times. So mindfulness in Sanskrit is smriti, which means to remember. And what they are translating here as alertness is the word samprapajnana, which is, most people agree that the word smriti in English means mindfulness or awareness. But this other word, this samprapajnana, nobody can agree on how you should translate it, which shows that there isn't an exact English translation, because everybody tries a different word. So it gets translated here as alertness, vigilance, carefulness, clear comprehension, introspection, and so forth. There is no exact word for it. And it goes along together with mindfulness. So that in Tibetan, the word for mindfulness is Trempa, which again means to remember. And this other word in Tibetan is Sheshin, and so they usually put it together as Trenche, bring the two words together. And so they always talk about Trenche, not just Trempa, Trenche. So this word, which they're translating here as alertness, the main function is that it's that part of our mind, our consciousness, which checks up what's going on. Somebody said it's like a spy. And it comes up and it looks at the mind. What's happening? Is our mindfulness steady? Are we distracted? Are we sinking? What's happening? So then, when it sees what is the state of mind, then we can rectify that. Because so often when we're also, not only during the day, but also in our practice, sometimes we don't even notice. We think we're being very calm and quiet and peaceful. We're really learning how to meditate now. And all the time, all is happening is that it's sinking and we're becoming quite sleepy. And so people can stay in that state for a long time thinking they're going into samadhi. And it is, they say, if you get attached to that state, then you could be reborn as a cow. Because you think cows, in India, in the middle of the road, there they sit, traffic roaring on either side. So if you want that, then this, when we're around 6 and we don't notice it, we can think we're going into deep levels of meditation, but it's not meditation. Meditation, at the end of our meditation session, we should feel very awake, very clear. If we feel kind of spaced out, then that's a danger sign. Distraction is much easier to recognize. We can recognize very easily when we're distracted. So, but this other side, the sinking, is more dangerous because, as I say, people can mistake it for going into deeper levels of meditation, but it's not that at all. And so this alertness just comes up from time to time. It checks out what's happening. Are we clear, conscious, undistracted, focused? Then it just subsides again. It's not there all the time. But if it sees a problem, sinking, distraction, lack of mindfulness, then we can recognize that there's a problem and bring it back into balance again. So it's a very useful tool of the mind. Just checks up from time to time. How's it doing? Okay. Then it goes back. If not, then, no, I can see. Very distracted. Okay. Not. And so in this way, it accompanies our mindfulness. And so it should be our constant companion. The supreme companions. It's our best friend. This is the point. That if we have this mindfulness and this alertness or introspection, as much as we can cultivate it, like having a good friend with us, a good companion on our journey, this is the best companion we can have. To be aware, to be present, to be conscious. There is no better friend for our mind than that. And so, therefore, we should cultivate the friendship. And we should try, like having a good friend with us, a good companion. We like to be with them. They travel with us. They're always with us. They are good friends, helpers in time of need, encouraging us, and being just somebody that it's very nice and pleasant and relaxing to be with. And we miss them when we're not with them. That's how it should be. that our awareness should be with us as much as possible, and when we lose our awareness, we miss it and try to bring it back again, because that is the biggest help for our mind and for our lives. Our relationship not only to ourselves, but our relationship with others. When we lose our mindfulness, then we can get into all sorts of trouble. But if we have mindfulness at the door of the mind, watching, then our actions and our speech will be wholesome, will be skillful. When we lose our mindfulness, then we are likely to be invaded by the inner terrorists of our anger and greed and jealousy and all sorts of negative states of mind. In order to prevent those negative states of mind from entering, we need to have a guard. And the guard of the entrance is our mindfulness and our introspection. So and everywhere we go, we can take them with them, even in sleep. You know, the Tibetans don't like to waste time. So they have a lot of dream yoga and lucid dreaming and so forth, so that, you know, during the time when you think, oh no, I can relax, forget it, no way. There are all these practices now to do when you're falling asleep, when you're asleep, when you're dreaming, when you wake up, then you never get time off. So that also, the dream practices also depend on awareness. You know, how to practice lucid dreaming is how to be aware when we're asleep and to know we're dreaming. Recognize the dream as a dream. And in order to be able to do that, we need to fall asleep with awareness, with being conscious, and how then that keeps that thread, so that if we start to dream, we recognize it's a dream, and then we can work with the dream and change it, and play with it, and do all sorts of things with it. So the point is that therefore, at all times, our best, most faithful companions would be our ability to be aware. It's a state of waking up in our consciousness instead of being pulled along by all our thoughts and feelings and just immersed in that. It's the crucial point of mind training. And as I say, usually people start either by bringing our attention to the body, how it moves, and very simple, walking, standing, sitting, doing simple tasks. I mean, one can say, okay, one can make a commitment. Okay, when I brush my teeth, when I comb my hair, when I drink a cup of tea, I will do it with mindfulness, right? So some simple action, to do it with awareness, instead of just combing your hair thinking of 1,000 other things. Oh God, look, it's getting grey. You know, just comb and know you're combing. Feel the feeling of it, the movement of the body, the feeling of how it is on the scalp and so forth. Or cleaning teeth, just be aware of that, not thinking about it, not commenting on it, not even thinking, oh, now I'm aware. Now I'm being mindful. Oh, being mindful is very easy. Look, I'm brushing my teeth and I'm being so mindful, blah, 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 blah. Not that. It's just very relaxed, knowing, feeling, being with it, not judging, just knowing. It's very de-stressing for the mind. And by taking simple actions and determining to use them as our object of mindfulness, we train the mind in how to be more aware, more alert. So it's, you know, in the beginning it's impossible to be mindful the whole day, but we can take certain actions and determine that when we do that, when we drink a cup of tea, we'll drink it mindfully. When we walk, we will walk mindfully. And so forth. And during the day, when we remember to just look inside, what is the mind doing in this moment? What is the body doing in this moment? Just to try to bring ourselves into the present. And away from endlessly being in the past or in the future. And if we need to plan, then we know we are planning. Or we know we are remembering. Not swept along by it, but knowing about it. Then that gives us this inner poise, this inner sense of presence, that we're not swept away. But to start very simply, developing our ability to be aware and mindful, so that gradually that strengthens like any muscles. If we use it, then it strengthens. And our mind is capable of being mindful. It's a level of awareness, of consciousness which we all possess. When you're driving in a difficult situation, one is mindful. Don't talk to me, I'm concentrating. We all have it, but we don't make use of it, because we prefer to be swept along by our thoughts and thinking. So the most important thing we can do is to learn how to be present, how to be aware, how to be conscious. Then that filtrates into everything we do and say and think. And so for this reason, he says that our supreme companion, the person the state of mind that should accompany us everywhere, is being mindful and being alert. So when we eat lunch, try to eat mindfully. Before, we've fallen apart a bit because we had too many guests, but for a time in our staff dining room at the nunnery, we would have Tuesdays and Thursdays as mindfulness day. And on those days we were silent and we all tried to eat more mindfully. As I say, we did that for some time and it was very nice. Eventually it fell apart because often we would have guests and then they would feel sort of awkward, having to sort of be quiet and not talk. But it's a good idea, to take certain days and determine on that day you're going to eat silently and be aware. Our nuns in July and August, they have a 2-month silent retreat. They're doing recitations and mantras and so forth, but they don't speak to each other, they keep silent and they eat in silence. And the little nuns, we have all these little ones, they have to camp out in the study center and they all have mattresses on the floor, so it's a bit like camping, so they enjoy it. But I walked past one day, and the little ones, in those days they were really very small, 4, 5, 6 years old, and they were all sitting in a circle, eating, completely in silence. They knew the big nuns were always silent, so they were all eating very mindfully. And I walked past, and they kind of laughed up. So it's good training, it's good training. Just bring the attention in, instead of talking and endlessly being distracted while we're eating, just focus on eating and being aware of putting food in our mouth, chewing, and then swallowing, and then taking the next mouthful without being distracted by speech. So, the most supreme friend we can have for our mind is to be more mindful, more aware of what's going on inside us. This is our biggest, kindest friend that will help us enormously in our life. Really, especially with dealing with the difficulties and the problems which come into our life, both created by ourselves and created from outside. If we can be paused within, then most of the problems we face have a solution if we are really conscious in the way. So that's why Atisha says he's our best friend, our supreme companion. Best friend is just the good.